Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about my top 24 ranked tight ends for our upcoming 2025 fantasy football drafts. Now, before I get into talking about all these players and sharing with you guys my thought process and opinions, and of course the statistics that justify these rankings as we approach our upcoming drafts, a couple reminders. First and foremost, if you're looking for my thoughts on a specific tight end, you can find timestamps down in the description of the video. While you're down there, if you have not yet already, be sure to subscribe. Of course, we're making daily fantasy football content in order to help you capture a 2025 fantasy football championship. Last but definitely not least, for those of you guys who want to gain an advantage for your upcoming drafts, but not only that, for the remainder of the 2025 season, be sure to travel down to the description and check out the link and check out Betr. Over the course of this entire season, I'll be partnering with them not only to provide you guys picks every single episode and of course put my predictions to the test, but of course provide rankings for the entirety of the year. All you have to do is sign up using code Andrew, make that first time deposit minimum of $10, and make that first time play of $1, and you'll go ahead and get my rankings every single week for the remainder of the season. Over the course of the month of August, I'll be sending draft rankings from my email directly to yours. These rankings consist of half PPR, full PPR, positional tier rankings, and of course flex rankings at a top 200 capacity. Again, more information regarding all this down in the description. For those of you who are wondering if you're eligible to take advantage of the opportunity, be sure to check out the map to the right side of the screen to determine your current eligibility. And of course, for new users, if you go ahead and play up to $10 today, you'll get $30 instantly. If you want to take advantage of that, be sure to check out the link down in the description. Thank you very much for all the support. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's talk about my top 24 ranked tight ends, beginning with our number one, the reigning number one tight end in fantasy football. That is Brock Bowers. In his rookie season, breaking records for the most receiving yards by a tight end rookie, of course, breaking Mike Ditka's record, also breaking the record for most receptions by a tight end, breaking Sam LaPorta's record, only set the year prior. But Brock Bowers was incredible last year, and a lot of that took place post Davante Adams' overall tenure within the Las Vegas Raiders offense. That's weeks 5 through 18, in which we saw Brock Bowers averaging 9.98 targets per game and 13.38 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format. So as we approach 2025, the question is, can he repeat those statistics? And I think he very easily can, considering what this offense and this team has provided in 2025's offseason. We're talking about a brand new head coach improvement in Pete Carroll, a new offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly, who is certainly going to send the ball in his direction. And we've got an improvement at the quarterback position with Jonnu Smith, replacing guys like Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. So going forward, I'm anticipating to see Brock Bowers retain this number one overall position, and of course should be drafted as such. Now, when we're talking about the offensive coordinator change, specifically Chip Kelly, we talked about him ad nauseum yesterday in regards to Ashton Jeanty and the potential that he's going to provide him in regards to opportunity, but I think that's going to stay consistent in regards to someone like Brock Bowers as well. Even though the Las Vegas Raiders were number one amongst all teams in terms of total tight end targets in 2024 with 198, 153 of which went in the direction of Brock Bowers, of course, there's still going to be a lot of opportunity going in the direction of Brock Bowers, even if they're not able to eclipse that 198 total target watermark. I mean, again, Chip Kelly, when we go back to his days with the Philadelphia Eagles as their primary play caller in 2014 and 2015, when we take the averages of tight end productions, we're looking at season averages of 145 targets, 98 receptions, 1,176 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, and 196 plus fantasy points and a half PPR. Again, I'm anticipating very similar levels of success and for Brock Bowers to stay in this top 3 conversation, to say the very least, especially considering, like I mentioned, the quarterback improvement. Last season, amongst all tight ends, he had the most uncatchable targets over the course of the entire year. 28 of his 153 targets were deemed uncatchable. That's 18.3% of his overall opportunity share completely wasted. When we talk about Jonnu Smith and the levels of success he has had in terms of accuracy over the course of the last 3 seasons with the Seahawks, he has had a 77+% adjusted completion percentage, which is some of the highest in the National Football League over the course of the last 3 seasons. Incredibly efficient. And again, besides the couple rookie wide receivers that they've brought in, there's not very much target competition for Brock Bowers to continue to be the number one option within this offense. Now, speaking of being the number one option of your offense, let's talk about Trey McBride, my number 2. A tight end that had himself an incredible late stretch in the 2024 season. From weeks 12 through 18, really took over with 11.71 targets per game and in a half PPR, 14.63 fantasy points per game throughout that span of time, the number one overall tight end, and hopefully going into this upcoming season is going to continue that streak of success. Now, clear and away, he is the number one receiving option of this offense, and they haven't added any sort of target competition And I don't anticipate a lot of the overall targets that have gone in his direction to dissipate just because Marvin Harrison may get himself more opportunity going into his second season. I mean, just looking at the Cardinals' targets over the course of the last 2 seasons, 179 in 2023 and 178 in 2024. Those numbers should stay consistent, and Trey McBride should stay at the top of this conversation in regards to tight end potential upside. So if the targets are going to be there, Kyler Murray is going to continue to look to Trey McBride as a security blanket and number 1 option. Really, what is missing from Trey McBride's overall, potential success to make him the number 1 overall tight end this year? The only thing that was missing in 2024 that really separated from the bunch was total touchdowns. Unfortunately, he only scored 4 total touchdowns, 2 through the air and 2 on the ground. But amongst all players in the National Football League last season, had the 12th most red zone targets. He had 20 total targets, which again only led to 2 receiving touchdowns. He had the 5th most red zone targets inside the 10-yard line, 13 total targets, which again only led to 2 receiving touchdowns. I'm anticipating those numbers to go up in terms of total touchdowns scored. And when in fact they do, Trey McBride certainly will be vying for the number 1 overall tight end position by the end of the 2025 year. Now, before we continue again with the final member of our S tier, the thumbnail of today's episode, a couple reminders. Again, via Betr right now, you can go ahead and get Week 1, Trey McBride at 60.5 receiving yards, which in my mind is incredibly low. Taking on the New Orleans Saints, they are anticipated to be the favorite in that game. But most recently, from what we have seen from Trey McBride, in 8 of the last 10 regular season games that he has played going back to 2024, in 8 of those last 10 games, he had himself 65 or more receiving yards. That's a 80% success rate, to which I'm believing if we're going ahead and taking more on his overall number, it would be a great overall play. As for Brock Bowers at 68.5, we're going to have to think about that. But as of right now, I'm really intrigued with this number going into this upcoming season. All right, let's go ahead. Let's continue on with the tight end conversation with, again, like I mentioned, the thumbnail of today's episode, the one and only George Kittle. So here's the thing about George Kittle. While we stay in the NFC West, he truly is a player that is going to dominate at the point of attack, and he has done that over an extended period of time. In 6 of the last 7 seasons, he has been a top 5 ranked tight end in fantasy football. So when we talk about guaranteed success, George Kittle is the poster child of that. And at the current ADP discount that we are finding him at in comparison to guys like Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, I mean, he truly is one of the better selections in the entire fantasy football draft, considering when we're able to get him in comparison to where, Bowers and McBride are coming off of the board, and the potential upside that Kittle has to even finish as the tight end overall 1 in comparison to these other 2. I mean, when we look at 2024, from weeks 1 through 6, with a healthy Ayuk, Debo, and Jennings, we saw George Kittle averaging 7 targets per game and 14.46 half PPR fantasy points per game. Even in the span of time in which we did see Ayuk, Debo, and Jennings injured, we saw even more potential for upside from a guy like George Kittle, where he averaged 15.05 fantasy points per game. So if we're going to be in a conversation in which we're entering 2025 with no Debo Samuel as he's been traded to the Commanders, no Ayuk because he is dealing with the season-ending injury that ended his 2024 campaign, and of course, Jennings is dealing with some contract negotiation issues. He's also dealing with the fact that he's had an injury in training camp. There's a lot of upside for George Kittle to be the number 1 receiving option of this offense. And again, looking back at the last 2 seasons, when he has had a 22+% target rate, that's 1 out of almost every 4 routes ran getting a target in his direction. A guy that isn't scarce of getting touchdowns, having scored 21 total in the last 36 regular season games he has played with Brock Purdy, that being a 58.33% success rate. I'm anticipating a lot of success for George Kittle in 2025. All right, now before we go ahead and continue with the A tier, again, a reminder for those of you guys who are trying to get your hands on Andrew Kirchhoff's 2025 Fantasy Football Draft Guide, you can find that exclusively on Patreon. There's a link down in the description. Via Patreon, you'll get my rankings on a consistent, updated basis. You can ask me unlimited questions about anything fantasy football related in regards to, draft write-ups, in regards to the potential of kind of reviewing your drafts with you. All that available there. More information down in the description. Check out the Patreon today. Get your hands on my draft guide. Thank you very much for all the support. Okay. Let's begin the A tier with another tight end that, again, has proven in the past that he can be in the top 3 category, but as of late hasn't been able to show that because, unfortunately, of the ACL injury that he sustained back in 2023 and how that, unfortunately, really didn't lead to much success in 2024, considering, again, he barely played more than half the season. So as we approach 2025, I anticipate TJ Hockenson to get back to his strong overall production and what he showed us in 2022 and 2023 within the Vikings offense, finishing as the number 2 and the number 4 ranked tight end overall. Now, when we look back at 2022 and 2023, the Vikings targeted their tight ends the third most times in 2022 with 146 targets, and the most times amongst all teams in 2023 with 179 targets. Unfortunately, this most recent season, they ranked 14th with only 117 targets, but that's primarily because TJ Hockenson was out due to injury. And of course, targeting guys like Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson become easier when someone like TJ Hockenson isn't on the field and finding himself open. So as we approach 2025, another year removed from his injury, I mean, when we look at weeks 1 through 15 of his 2023 campaign prior to the ACL, he was averaging 8.78 targets per game and 11.69 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format, setting career highs in receptions and receiving yards that season, and of course, taking over the league. So I'm anticipating TJ Hockenson to get back into that overall conversation in terms of opportunity and production. And with JJ McCarthy under center, I think he's going to look towards TJ Hockenson as a security blanket. I mean, again, Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer. Kevin O'Connell traded for TJ Hockenson a couple years ago and has established that he wants to utilize him at a high clip in this offense, and that's exactly what's going to happen. The advantages that TJ Hockenson has is that he's going to be spending this entire training camp building a rapport with JJ McCarthy while Justin Jefferson is sidelined with a hamstring and Jordan Addison is having himself, off the field troubles that is going to potentially lead to a suspension and even more opportunities for someone like TJ Hockenson early in the 2025 season. All right, let's move on to our number 5. We have David Njoku. Yes, I truly am a believer of David Njoku based on his production that he has proven to us year in and year out. The question is, can he stay healthy? And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But as of late, David Njoku in 2024, from weeks 6 through 16, 9.89 targets per game and 12.02 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. Throughout that span of time, number 6 overall amongst tight ends in terms of a fantasy point per game average when healthy. If we were to go ahead and put his numbers on a 17-game pace, we're talking about 168 targets, 111 receptions, 800 yards, 9 touchdowns, legitimate numbers across the board. And you may be thinking, well, Andrew, the likelihood of David Njoku seeing 168 targets within a given season, considering he's 29 years old, he's going into his 9th season of his NFL career. I understand these things, but the Browns are very much so predicated on getting him the ball. I mean, the Browns, amongst all teams in the last 5 seasons, they've been top 6 in tight end targets each of the last 5 years. 166, 133, 142 and 139. The numbers continue to go up in the direction of David Njoku's overall target opportunity because, again, Kevin Stefanski has built an offense that revolves around getting him the ball on a consistent basis while they're in negative game scripts, which, again, we're all anticipating for that to be the case in 2025. So, yes, he has himself a higher age. Yes, he has struggled with injuries, missing 6 games last season. But as we approach this 2025 season, regardless of who plays quarterback, he's going to find success. If it ends up being Joe Flacco, let's not forget in 2023, weeks 14 through 19, with Joe Flacco, he averaged 10 targets per game and 17.22 fantasy points per game and a half PPR. And even if Dylan Gabriel or Shadur Sanders takes over at the quarterback position sometime this year, we travel back to last season, week 16, with DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a quarterback, and guess what? David Njoku, 10 targets, 8 catches, 66 yards, and 10.6 fantasy points. The offense is predicated on getting the tight end the ball. That is going to continue to happen this upcoming season, whoever's playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Moving on to our number 6, we have Sam LaPorta. Look, Sam LaPorta is a stud. And unfortunately, this most recent season in 2024, many of us drafted him under the assumption that he's going to return as the number 1 tight end, but unfortunately that didn't happen. He finished as number 7, and even though he had a slow start and an injury that he suffered that really slowed down his weeks 1 through 7, from weeks 8 through 20, the remainder of the season, he was on fire. 6.64 targets per game, 11.21 fantasy points per game, a 17-game span that would have led to double-digit receiving touchdowns and over 190 fantasy points and in that top 3 conversation by season's end. So the question remains, why can't Sam LaPorta potentially get into that conversation and be within the S tier once again this season? The way that I see it, Jameson Williams truly made an impact last season, and I think that impact is going to continue to persist considering how much success Jameson Williams has found. And of course, how much the coaching staff for the Lions continues to beat the drum of Jameson Williams really being a threat within this offense in 2025. So if there's going to be a negative impact on LaPorta's overall receiving upside in terms of targets, in terms of usage, which we did see take place in 2024. I mean, the tight end targets went from 136 to 100 in just one season. If that number continues to drop, considering the new offensive coordinator coming into the conversation with no longer having Ben Johnson there could be a lot of potential in which Sam LaPorta struggles. I mean, again, I don't anticipate him to top his rookie year numbers, especially considering, Amon-Ra St. Brown is still the number one. J-Mo could be the number two. If he's the number three option within this receiving offense, in order to find him in the top three conversation of the tight end position, either an injury would have to take place to someone like Amon-Ra or Jameson Williams, or he'd have to score double-digit touchdowns in a flurry very quickly within the season. And in that overall effort, maybe, just maybe, he could finish as the top three option at the tight end position. But again, I don't anticipate that to happen this season, even though he did have himself a lot of positives in regards to his overall production last season, increasing his overall average depth of target, increasing the yards after catch per reception, and getting himself even more red zone usage. I think the number 6 spot is a pretty safe one for Sam LaPorta in 2025. Moving on to our number 7 to close out this tier, we have Travis Kelce. Look, Travis Kelce, unlike these other players, is on the decline. Everybody else is accelerating, finding themselves with more targets every single game. But unfortunately, Travis Kelce, this most recent season, disappointed once again, declining in terms of his overall yak per reception average at an all-time low in his career at 3.9 yards. Missed tackles forced last season at an all-time low of only 5. Again, the elusiveness, the playmaking after the catch just wasn't found last season. And even though he found a lot of opportunity in the post-Rashee Rice era of the 2024 season, as soon as Rashee Rice went down with that injury from weeks 4 through 17, Travis Kelce became the number one receiving option in this offense with 9.31 targets per game and 10.45 fantasy points per game. I think that level of opportunity is going to be tough to find once again, even though the Chiefs targeted their tight ends 192 times last season, which was number 2 amongst all teams, only second to the Raiders. Even though the opportunity share is there, the touchdowns just weren't for Travis Kelce. Even though he was number 3 amongst all receiving options in terms of total red zone targets last season with 25, and only led the 3 receiving touchdowns, which is a career low for Travis Kelce. Again, if we continue in the direction in which he's going to be utilized at a high pace within the red zone, I'd anticipate more touchdowns, but I do anticipate the return of Rashee Rice, the kind of steps forward that we continue to see from Xavier Worthy to continue to take away targets from Travis Kelce. I still anticipate him to be a top 7 option, but don't anticipate, that number 1 overall potential standing for him this upcoming year. Moving on to our number 8, we have Mark Andrews. Now, we go from one veteran tight end to another. Mark Andrews, again, very similar to George Kittle, has found himself incredibly successful over the course of the last 6 seasons. In the last 6 seasons, he has been a top 6 tight end in terms of fantasy points per game average every single season. He was number 4, 4, 1, 3, 4, 6 in terms of points per game at the tight end position in a half PPR. Again, we're anticipating him to find success, but I have him far lesser ranked than where he has been able to produce over the last couple of years, considering where his career has gone as of late. I mean, beginning of the 2024 season, we thought that Mark Andrews' career was over. We thought Isaiah Likely was taking over, as weeks 1 through 4 consisted of Mark Andrews averaging 2.25 targets per game and 2.38 fantasy points per game. But from weeks 5 through 18, he was able to save his season with 4.6 targets per game and 11.68 fantasy points per game. Sure, only 4.6 targets per game, Andrew. How am I going to find success with Mark Andrews in that capacity? Well, Mark Andrews was able to score himself a career-high 11 receiving touchdowns last season, thanks to the fact that Lamar Jackson threw 41 total touchdowns a year ago. Again, should have won the MVP, but that's a different conversation. When we talk about the potential of Mark Andrews going into this upcoming year, even though he's number 1 amongst all players in terms of red zone touchdowns last year, he's number 1 amongst all Ravens over the course of 2019 to 2024 in terms of red zone targets and red zone touchdowns. Even though these are all true, we should still expect Mark Andrews to score far less touchdowns this upcoming season. And if his target count is going to continue to persist at 4.6 to 5 targets per game, and he is not scoring just as many touchdowns as he did last year, I think that's really going to lead him to kind of dropping down the rankings conversation to our number 8. I know that Isaiah Likely, of course, will have surgery due to his broken foot and is believed to potentially miss up to 6 weeks. Again, from now into the beginning of the season, let's say, for example, Isaiah Likely misses the first 2 to 3 games of the year. Sure, that is going to provide a lot of initial upside for Mark Andrews, but eventually Isaiah Likely is going to come back and is going to continue to dig into his overall workload and potential for upside. I think this offense, again, they want to get their tight ends involved. Again, they had the 8th most targets amongst all teams at the tight end position last season, but truly, it is a scary overall situation. If Mark Andrews doesn't find himself scoring, 6 to 8 touchdowns this year, the number 8 overall spot may not be as guaranteed as it has been in years past for him. Moving on to our number 9, Evan Engram was obviously signed to the Denver Broncos this offseason. Denver Broncos team that in 2024 targeted their tight ends 72 total times, which ranked 30th amongst all teams. Again, when you add someone like Evan Engram, you are making the implication that you are going to utilize your tight end position far more in 2025. Now, when we talk about the potential of success for the tight end position, when you're associated with Sean Payton, the head coach and primary play caller of this offense, we look back to the past of tight ends within the New Orleans Saints offense. Jimmy Graham in 2013 and 14 finishes the number 1 and 2 overall tight end, of course, scoring a lot of touchdowns. But then even years after that, Ben Watson, Kobe Fleener, Jared Cook finding success within a Sean Payton offense. So as we approach this upcoming year, why not someone like Evan Engram? I mean, even if we talk about the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos currently, who is Joe Lombardi, the former offensive coordinator of the Chargers in 2021 and 2022, in those 2 seasons with the Chargers, he targeted his tight ends 126 and 137 total times. We are going to see a lot of opportunity going the direction of Evan Engram, a player that, yes, is getting up there in age, but in my opinion, still has a lot left in the tank for fantasy purposes. Again, considering this offense doesn't really have a solidified number 2 target getter outside of, someone like Cortland Sutton, really, there isn't a number 2. So with that being the case, I do anticipate Evan Engram to step up and be the number 2 receiving option for Bo Nix. Again, it just was a couple years ago in which Evan Engram in 2023 captured 114 total receptions, which is second all-time only to Zach Ertz for the most receptions by a tight end within a given regular season. I still anticipate a lot of success for him coming off of a year in which, when he was healthy, was garnering 7.5 targets per game and over 8 fantasy points per game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Those numbers could potentially increase going to the Denver Broncos. Moving on to our number 10, we have Colston Loveland, one of the 2 rookie tight ends that were selected in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft. And I immediately expect him to find success because you don't utilize first round draft capital on a tight end unless you're going to immediately implicate him for a lot of potential for opportunity. And we have seen that take place for the history of fantasy football. When we talk about, there have been 9 rookie tight ends that have been drafted within the first round of their respective draft, going back to 2015. When we talk about those 9 tight ends, 7 of them had healthy rookie seasons. Those tight ends that were healthy were averaging 91 targets in their rookie year and finished as tight end 11 overall, which again are promising statistics. But I do anticipate, someone like Colston Loveland to potentially get into that conversation and be better than just tight end number 11 overall, because the 4 tight ends that in their rookie season were given ample opportunity of 90 or more targets consist of Brock Bowers, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, and Evan Engram. Those 4 tight ends all were top 12 ranked within their given rookie season. And when we talk about the offense that Colston Loveland is joining, I mean, again, first and foremost, he's a 6'6", 248-pound tight end. He is a receiver in a tight end's body. And when you associate him with Ben Johnson, again, Ben Johnson most recently elevated Sam LaPorta in his rookie year to being the number 1 overall tight end. The following year, Sam LaPorta finishes tight end 7. Even before Sam LaPorta arrived to the Detroit Lions, while Ben Johnson was the OC of the Lions in 2022, they were number 2 amongst all teams in tight end receiving touchdowns, 12 that season. In 2023, they stayed in the conversation with double-digit tight end touchdowns, and in 2024, 9 receiving touchdowns for their tight ends. So if the touchdowns are going to be there for Colston Loveland, if the opportunity is going to be there, if Ben Johnson is willing to make a stamp of approval by using first-round draft capital on a player like him, I mean, we've already seen Cole Kmet taking second-string snaps this training camp. I'm anticipating Colston Loveland to make an immediate impact and could very easily be this season Sam LaPorta / Brock Bowers to make an immediate rookie impact. Now, another rookie tight end that I want to talk about is Tyler Warren. Another, first round selected tight end in the 2025 NFL draft. And like I just mentioned, those recent statistics, I'll repeat it to you once again for those of you who didn't listen to me talk about Colston Loveland. Tyler Warren has a lot of potential within this Colts offense based on the history of success from rookie tight ends that have been given ample opportunity. We're talking about 9 rookie tight ends drafted in the first round of the last decade of the NFL draft, 7 of which stayed healthy. Of those 7, the average finishing position was tight end 11 overall with 91 targets per season. Now, if we go ahead and isolate the tight ends that got themselves ample levels of opportunity in their rookie year, we're talking about Brock Bowers, Kincaid, Pitts, and Engram getting 90-plus targets. All of them finished within the top 12. So why not someone like Tyler Warren, who, again, very similar to Colston Loveland, 6'6", 250 pounds, a receiver in a tight end's body. I mean, when we talk about what Tyler Warren was able to accomplish in the NCAA his final season, again, 137 targets, 104 receptions, 1,200 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, 26 rushing attempts for 218 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. He was number 2 amongst all tight ends in the past decade, only behind Brock Bowers in terms of yards per route run in the NCAA. So we're anticipating a lot of success. Shane Steichen, the primary play caller and of course head coach of the Colts, has utilized tight ends at a premium in the past. If we travel back to 2021 and 2022 when he was the Eagles OC, he targeted his tight ends in 2021 121 times. If we talk about his stint with the Colts thus far, even though this most recent season, he targeted his tight end 75 total times. Back in 2023, they had 119 targets. So if we're going to look in the direction of Tyler Warren, potentially deliver him 90 plus targets, I'm anticipating a top 12 finish for him in 2025. All right, moving on to the final tight end of our top 12 conversation, we have Tucker Kraft. Look, Tucker Kraft was able to find himself a lot of upside in 2024 due to the injuries that surrounded him within the Green Bay Packers offense. Luke Musgrave went down for an extended period of time. We had Christian Watson with injuries. We had Romeo Doubs with injuries. So from weeks 4 through 14, we saw Tucker Kraft averaging 10.33 fantasy points per game because really, there wasn't a clear number one within this offense. Sure, Jaden Reed was getting opportunity, but Tucker Kraft needed to step up in the absence of all these other, passing threats being injured. So as we approach this upcoming season, the question is, can he repeat that level of production if the injuries don't continue to persist? Even though last season, yes, he was able to lead the team in terms of total red zone targets and receiving touchdowns within the red zone, he's going to have to repeat those numbers if he wants to stay within the top 12 capacity at the tight end position, which I think he's capable of accomplishing considering how much of a dynamic receiving option he is and what he has proven thus far this season. I mean, last season in terms of after the catch, 9.3 yards after the catch per reception. He was tied number 1 with Jake Ferguson in terms of tight end forced tackles missed. Again, with the ball in his hand, he is a dynamic receiver. And what he was able to accomplish last season with a lack of overall opportunity share, and the fact that this offense still doesn't have a clear number 1, which we're hoping is potentially going to be Matthew Golden this year, considering, where they drafted him and the draft capital they utilized for him. If he's going to be the number 2, if Tucker Kraft can be the number 2 receiving option of this offense, I still think that he has the potential of being a top 12, player, under the assumption that his offense continues to throw the ball in his direction within the red zone and keeps him relevant via touchdowns. All right, let's move on to our number 13. We talked about Jake Ferguson just a moment ago in regards to Tucker Kraft because both of these players were number 1 amongst all tight ends in 2024 in terms of forced tackles missed at the tight end position, both with 15. So again, they're both incredibly elusive. They're both talented. They're both young. And as we approach the 2025 season, we saw Jake Ferguson ink a new contract. And there's a lot of potential for the return of Dak Prescott, elevating Jake Ferguson back to his 2023 days, in which his statistics were far better than what they looked like last season. But while Jake Ferguson had Dak Prescott healthy and in the lineup in 2024, we're talking about 7.83 targets per game and 8.23 fantasy points per game without scoring a single touchdown throughout those games with Dak Prescott. He was the number 11 overall tight end, number 13 in terms of fantasy points per game on average at the tight end position with nearly a 22% target rate. So as we approach the 2025 season, a tight end last year who was able to accumulate 63% of his overall receiving yards in terms of yards after the catch, again, is incredibly elusive with the ball in his hands, is going to find himself with Dak Prescott healthy instead of having to, rely upon Cooper Rush to deliver the ball in his direction, even though we do have George Pickens entering this offense, and that is going to lead to target competition. The offense for the Cowboys in each of the last 2 years has targeted their tight ends 126 and 136 times, top 10 both seasons. So I do anticipate Brian Schottenheimer to continue to utilize Jake Ferguson as his team is most likely going to be in a lot of negative game scripts and throwing the ball for majority of games. I think he could very easily finish within the top 12 of the conversation under the assumption that he gets enough red zone utilization. Back in 2023, he had the 5th most targets amongst all players in the red zone. If those numbers return in 2025, I would anticipate Jake Ferguson to easily get into the top 12 conversation. Moving on to our number 14, we have Jonnu Smith. As I'm sure we're all aware, Jonnu Smith was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers just a couple weeks ago after having an incredible season with the Miami Dolphins last year. Now, again, he joins the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. Jonnu Smith has a storied history with Arthur Smith over the years. I mean, we go back to his days with the Tennessee Titans in 2020, It led to Jonnu Smith finishing as the number 10 overall tight end with 8.55 fantasy points per game. We go to 2023. While Arthur Smith was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, Jonnu Smith was there and was the backup to Kyle Pitts, yet still finished as the number 16 overall tight end. So now that we implant Jonnu Smith into the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers, anticipated to be the number 2 receiving option of this offense, and considering how much Arthur Smith has utilized his tight ends over the course of the last 2 seasons, in 2023 with the Falcons, targeted his tight ends 174 times. In 2024, 121 times. Again, top 12 in both those categories in back-to-back seasons, even with Pat Freiermuth within this offense. Again, Pat Freiermuth was only getting himself about 4.73 targets per game playing within the inline. I do anticipate, yes, DK Metcalf to clear and away be the number 1 receiving option of this offense and to get himself a consistent share of opportunity. But Jonnu Smith should be the slot receiving option of this offense. He should be hyper targeted by Aaron Rodgers, and hopefully we'll see similar numbers to what he was able to produce last year. Sure, I don't expect him to, be scoring 12.68 fantasy points per game like Jonnu Smith was capable of accomplishing in the back half of the season with Tua Tagovailoa under center, but I still anticipate to see him be relevant within this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Moving on to our number 15, we have Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid's argument to being a top 12 potential tight end in this upcoming season is relevant and is potentially there. There's a reason why I have him still within the C tiers, because I can see him finishing as a low-end tight end 1 and potentially taking that number 12 spot from Tucker Kraft. It's just purely a matter of, is he going to be given the opportunities to deliver such a great season? Again, many of us remember back in 2023, his rookie campaign, he had a 5.69 target per game average, which again is ample opportunity. So we all assumed at the time that going into 2024, he would get even more opportunity per game. And even though he did technically get himself 5.83 targets per game, it wasn't enough of a jump for us to potentially see Dalton Kincaid get into that top 12 conversation. He also had injuries last year, which certainly slowed him down. But, with 5.83 targets per game and the potential of those numbers potentially even increasing this upcoming season as they further, kind of separate themselves from Dawson Knox and his overall usage, 5.83 targets per game is about 99.11 targets as a whole throughout a 17-game paced season. So if there's a potential in which Dalton Kincaid can get to 100 targets, again, the history of fantasy football suggests that he is going to be a top 12 player in the event in which he gets 100 plus targets, because since 2020, there have been 26 total tight ends that have had 100 targets within a given season. 25 of those 26 tight ends finished within the top 12 of the position. Again, that's a 96% success rate. I would anticipate someone like Dalton Kincaid to hopefully be able to find himself that kind of level of opportunity, considering, again, this offense still doesn't have a number 1 receiving option at the point at which Stephon Diggs was years ago. They have Shakir, they have Keon Coleman, but hopefully we could see, potentially another step forward from Dalton Kincaid in 2025. Moving on to number 16, to begin the D tier, we have Dallas Goedert. Look, Dallas Goedert purely could be a top 12 ranked tight end if he stays healthy, purely. Because since 2020, Dallas Goedert has unfortunately missed 23 games due to injury, when counting games that he has left early with injury as well. Again, that's a lot of time missed. And considering he has missed so much time, and the offense that he is so associated with, it's hard to draft him as a top 12 option, because again, you're worried that he's going to get injured. You utilize draft capital on him, and then you have to go ahead and hit the waiver wire. Or of course, potentially draft 2 tight ends within this range and just kind of play them on matchup basis. But when we talk about his production level as of late, from 2022 to 2024, he's averaged 9.45, 8.29, and 9.22 fantasy points per game. Again, over a 17-game pace, this guy would easily be in the top 10 conversation at the tight end position, which he has proven to be able to accomplish in his past. But going forward, considering he's the number 3 receiving option of this offense behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, he has a non-existent red zone utilization, considering, again, the rushing upside of guys like Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. The Eagles ranked 27th amongst all teams in terms of total red zone targets. Again, not a great overall look. If he can stay healthy, certainly can be top 12. But again, history suggests that he probably won't be able to in 2025, despite how much we want that to be the case. Moving on to my number 17, we have Hunter Henry. Look, Hunter Henry, the entire argument for him is whether or not he's going to continue to see a high target share like he did late last season, when there was no target competition within this Patriots offense in comparison to what it looks like in 2025. Late last season, in the 9 games in which he played with Drake May, 7.11 targets per game, 8.28 fantasy points per game, was on pace for being the number 6 overall tight end over a 17-game season. But again, when we approach 2025 and we add guys like Mac Hollins, Kyle Williams, and especially guys like Stephon Diggs as receiving threats that are going to take away opportunity from Hunter Henry, again, sure, maybe we're going to still be in these negative game scripts and he'll be utilized at a high capacity, but I don't expect it to be as high as it was last season, considering he was competing with guys like Demario Douglas and Keyshawn Boutte for overall opportunities. So going into this upcoming year, even though you do get an improvement of different threats within the offense that could lead to more red zone opportunities, he really is going to have to rely upon touchdowns to get himself into this top 12 conversation. Sure, he has dealt with McDaniels in the past. Josh McDaniels, of course, returning to New England back in 2021 with New England. Of course, it elevated Hunter Henry to being the number 9 overall tight end, considering he scored 9 receiving touchdowns within that given year. If he returns to those kind of numbers, sure, top 12 is within line for him. But as of right now, I think the number 17 spot is solid. Moving on to our number 18, we have another veteran tight end. Pretty much the D tier is veteran tight ends. We have Zach Ertz, who's coming off of an incredible season. This future Hall of Fame tight end, again, still manages to produce incredible numbers at the age of 33, now going into his age 34 season. I mean, late last season, from weeks 6 through 18, was averaging 10.35 fantasy points per game. Again, incredible numbers, primarily because of how much success he was finding, especially down within the red zone. And as we approach this upcoming season, again, we still have Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator, who helped elevate Ertz to being the number 5 overall tight end back in 2021 as a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Terry McLaurin recently has requested a trade. If there is going to be more targets going in the direction of Zach Ertz, the only question is going to be, can Zach Ertz stay healthy? If he can, then of course, top 18 could be his potential floor of production, as he has proven that he is very capable of producing even more than that. But as it currently stands, considering the age, the offense as a whole, I'm anticipating Terry McLaurin to sign Deebo Samuel, and his slot overall usage should impact Zach Ertz. I think 18 is safe going into this upcoming season. Moving on to our number 19, we have Juwan Johnson. Look, as we approach 2025, this offense sure is going to see the return of guys like Alvin Kamara from injury, Chris Olave, and Rashid Shaheed at the wide receiver position. But as we approach with Kellen Moore as the new primary play caller and head coach of this team, we got a new quarterback by the name of Tyler Shuck, rookie quarterback, who again is going to look in the direction of Juwan Johnson as potentially a security blanket after, of course, he's done dumping it off to Alvin Kamara. I think Juwan Johnson, who finishes the number 17 overall tight end and a half PPR last season, is still on pace for another top 20 season. When we take into account, of course, the usage that Kellen Moore has proven as an offensive coordinator in the National Football League. I mean, if we're talking about the last couple seasons, with the Cowboys, 131 targets, 130 the year after, with the Chargers, 133 targets, and this most recent season with the Eagles, 87 targets. If we're going to be in a situation in which we may see 115 targets going in the direction of the tight ends of the New Orleans Saints, with Taysom Hill dealing with the injury as it currently stands, and of course Juwan Johnson proving year in and year out that he can produce with ample opportunity. From 2022 to 2024, in games in which Juwan Johnson was targeted 5 times, he's averaging 9.68 fantasy points per game. Again, that's the kind of opportunity we need to see for him to average anywhere between 8 to 10 fantasy points, which we all know he's certainly capable of. Moving on to our number 20, we have Brenton Strange, who could very easily take a step forward this upcoming season, considering all that is happening in Jacksonville. The addition of Liam Cohen as the offensive play caller and the head coach and the mastermind of this offense is really going to potentially upgrade Brenton Strange to an extent. And the reason why I say to an extent is because it's purely going to be determined by how much utilization we see from Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. But if in fact Travis Hunter is going to be a 50-50 player offensively and defensively, then we may be in a situation in which Brenton Strange could be the number 2 receiving option of this offense, which we have seen back in 2024. K. Dotton as the number 2 receiving option of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers once Chris Godwin went down with injury was an impactful piece and a guy that was top 5 within those weeks, week in and week out, considering the opportunity share. So if we approach this upcoming season with the potential of Brenton Strange being either the number 2 or number 3 option of this offense, I think top 20 is at a base minimum. I mean, again, last season, in the absence of Evan Engram, was getting himself 4.88 targets per game, only 6.5 fantasy points per game, but again, in an offense that was lackluster. Now you have the improvement of the offensive coordinator, hopefully Trevor Lawrence taking steps forward and less target competition at the tight end position. I would anticipate someone like Brenton Strange to step up within the upcoming season. K. Dotton coming off of a year in which he finishes the top 20 tight end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Liam Cohen hopefully can elevate Strange into that conversation. Moving on to our number 21, we have Kyle Pitts. Listen, I'm done with the Kyle Pitts kind of palooza that is. I'm not really interested in buying the lottery ticket or going into the sweepstakes of him potentially showing up and showing out. Sure, he has finished as the number 15 14 overall tight end in the last 2 seasons. But truly, I am not interested in investing in Kyle Pitts, primarily because, again, the way that this offense is structured and the way that his route kind of tree has developed within this offense, specifically last season, I don't anticipate to see Michael Penix throwing the ball deep down the field in his direction. And even in the sample size that we had late last season, weeks 16 through 18, I mean, he only targeted Kyle Pitts 3.33 times per game throughout the final 3 games of the season. I know there's been a lot made out of the idea of Kyle Pitts working out the receivers, running routes with them for training camp, but unless we're finding Kyle Pitts being far more efficient in terms of separation, in terms of being able to find himself successful against man or zone coverage, I believe the number 21 rank is low, but again, it's just kind of continues to emphasize the fact that I just don't want any shares of Kyle Pitts this season. Now, shares of this upcoming tight end is certainly something I will be interested in. I think Mason Taylor is probably my favorite sleeper tight end pick at the end of drafts, someone that I want to have as my potentially, second or third tight end on roster, because he has the upside potential of finishing within the top 15 conversation if everything breaks in the right direction for him. He's entering as a rookie tight end, of course, and he's joining an offense that needs a number 2 receiving option. And outside of Garrett Wilson, who is clearing away the number 1, there isn't a number 2. I mean, you have Alan Lazard and Josh Reynolds. So as you approach this offense, who has Tanner Engstrom as their offensive coordinator, the former passing game coordinator and tight ends coach of the Lions, again, we're going to be in a situation in which Mason Taylor is going to get himself a lot of opportunity. Again, when Tanner Engstrom was with the Lions, he witnessed Ben Johnson utilize LaPorta, a rookie tight end at a high capacity. Why not Mason Taylor this year? Again, Justin Fields needs another kind of security blanket to throw the ball to. Back in his days with the Chicago Bears, Justin Fields threw the ball a bunch to Cole Kmet. I mean, Cole Kmet was the number 7 ranked tight end in back-to-back seasons, 2022 and 2023. So if the opportunity share is there for Mason Taylor, I think he can very easily crush his number 22 rank going into this upcoming season. I have hope for another rookie tight end. Again, this is the 4th one we're mentioning on today's episode. That's Elijah Arroyo, the starting tight end of the Seattle Seahawks. Again, just a couple weeks ago, the Seattle Seahawks cut Noah Fant. Again, he's going to be signing with the Cincinnati Bengals soon here. But Elijah Arroyo getting Noah Fant cut, I think is just even more confidence in his potential going into this upcoming season, especially considering you have the new OC, Clint Kubiak, who has heavily utilized tight ends back in his past, especially this most recent season with the New Orleans Saints. If he's going to be the number 2 or 3 receiving option after JSN, Cooper Kupp, that would lead to Elijah Arroyo being the number 3. I think there's a lot of potential for success within this overall conversation, considering the target opportunity he'll be exposed to with Sam Darnold. Moving on to the final tight end of our top 24 conversation, we have Dalton Schultz. Look, Dalton Schultz is getting up there in age, and even though he had very little target competition last season, was incredibly irrelevant. Was the number 21 ranked tight end last season when it was all said and done, despite Diggs and Dell having season-ending injuries and Nico Collins missing a significant stretch of time. So when you add guys like Christian Kirk and Higgins into the conversation and a healthy Nico Collins for potentially 17 games, I don't anticipate Dalton Schultz to take steps forward, even though the offensive coordinator may inclined to utilize him more, considering, again, Nick Caley, the new offensive coordinator, is a former Patriots and Rams tight ends coach. I still anticipate Dalton Schultz, considering he is getting to a point where he doesn't make much plays after the catch. He is a catch the ball and fall down kind of tight end at this stage in his career. All right, that's going to cover it for my top 24 tight end rankings. Again, for those of you guys who want to get my all-encompassing rankings at all positions, half PPR, full PPR, flex, all encompassing, you can go ahead and check out Betr, like I mentioned earlier. All you have to do is sign up using code Andrew, make that first time deposit, minimum of $10, make that first time play entry of $1, and you'll get those rankings. Or you can go ahead and check out the Patreon link down in the description. Again, I'll be back tomorrow with quarterback rankings at a top 24 capacity. The day after that will be the top 36 wide receivers. Again, a lot of content daily coming in your direction, so be sure to go ahead, subscribe if you have not yet already. But that's going to cover it for me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.